is where I should be, which is the Indian Affairs Committee for a markup. He'll be joining us later. We also have votes that are ongoing, and we have one more vote to cast in a short period of time, but Senator Tester and I agreed we should get the hearing started, and that's what we're going to do. So I would first thank the chairman for holding this hearing and to all of our witnesses for their presence here today. We're nearing Veterans Day, and this hearing is an opportunity to discuss the current state of affairs and economic well-being of veterans and their families, whether that be through education, training, and employment opportunities, or an efficient process when utilizing your VA loan to purchase a home. These programs that the VA and the Department of Labor lead together are imperative to the economic success of our military and veteran families. I look forward to hearing today how we can enhance the interagency collaboration between both departments and to better utilize the partnerships with organizations like the ones we have present today. The last year and a half have been a challenge for student veterans, institutions of higher learning, and the VA. I didn't say that very well. The last year and a half have been a challenge for student veterans and institutions of higher learning and for the VA. I want to thank the chairman and members of this committee for working together to ensure that student veterans and their dependents had protections that they needed to continue their education and training programs despite the challenges of the pandemic. We are still working on a path forward to extend some of those protections. The pandemic also negatively impacted veteran unemployment rates. In 2019, we witnessed the lowest veteran unemployment rate in nearly 2 decades, but as a result of COVID-19, the veteran unemployment rate rose exponentially. To help curb this unemployment spike, the chairman and I drafted a bill, later signed into law, which created a rapid retraining program for veterans who wish to pursue training in certain high-demand occupations. Through this program, along with the GI Bill, Vet Tech programs, and others, we help create new opportunities for our veterans who are a vital part of our country's workforce and economy. While we've made great strides in recent years to improve in-service military to civilian transition programs, continued community engagement is important. I look forward to hearing from our VA, Department of Labor, and our witnesses about how we can continue to enhance opportunities for veterans and how to improve support after an individual enters civilian life. We're also here today to discuss the VA's loan guarantee program, which provides veterans the opportunity to have a piece of the American dream and often at a zero down payment. Today, I hope we can discuss the current state of affairs with the loan guarantee program and pathways ahead to address the impacts the pandemic has had on national housing markets and the VA home loan program. Before I close with my remarks, I want to personally thank Dr. Art DeGroat from the state of Kansas, actually from Kansas State University. He is here on behalf of the university to discuss K-State's military and veteran programs and to share with us his background in veteran education and the transition from military to veteran service. Thank you, Art, for your decades of service in the Army and your continued service to our nation's veterans. Lastly, before I yield back, let me also thank the other witnesses first. Ms. Devlin from the Department of Labor, Mr. Burke, and Mr. Silva from the VA. But before I yield back, I do want to express my concern, disappointment, dissatisfaction that the VA has so strongly opposed sending the VBA's Principal Deputy Undersecretary, the most senior career person at the VA, and who the chairman specifically requested in the writing hearing invite to be here today. I understand that schedules have conflicts, but in this instance it seemed to be a complete disregard for the chairman and this committee's request. I hope this isn't an indication of the VA's lack of prioritization for the programs we will be discussing today, and I certainly hope this doesn't turn into a habit at the department. Mr. Murray, Mr. Monk, and Mr. Schumacher, thank you for your being here today on behalf of the VFW, the SVA, and Montana State University, and I also look forward to hearing your testimony. We'll call the witness to the table, and let me find the chairman's notes. I begin by welcoming Margarita Devlin, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Operations and Management, Veterans Employment and Training at the Department of Labor. She will be followed by Ron Burke, Deputy Undersecretary for Policy and Oversight at the Veterans Benefits Administration. Mr. Burke is accompanied by Ricardo Da Silva, Program Integration Officer, Education Service. Ms. Devlin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, and on behalf of the Department of Labor, I want to thank you for the opportunity to address veteran employment and education opportunities and challenges faced during the pandemic. After 26 years at the Department of Veterans Affairs, I was honored to join DOL Vets as the new Deputy Assistant Secretary for Operations and Management. I believe it's critical that we provide the highest quality services to enable veterans, transitioning service members, and military spouses to achieve their highest potential. On a personal note, my oldest son is currently an active duty Marine and will be transitioning out next year. So this is also personal for me. VETS administers the Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program, or HVRP, and also the Jobs for Veterans State Grants. The Jobs for Veterans State Grants, or JVSG, is a formula grant available to 54 state workforce agencies, which funded 1,510 employees in fiscal year 2021 at American job centers across the country. These positions included Disabled Veterans Outreach Program Specialists, local veterans employment representatives, and consolidated positions who perform a combination of both services. Disabled Veterans Outreach Program Specialists provide individualized career and training-related services to veterans with significant barriers to employment, with prioritized emphasis directed towards serving veterans who are economically or educationally disadvantaged. Our local veterans employment representatives conduct outreach to employers and business associations, as well as engage in advocacy efforts with hiring executives to increase employment opportunities for all veterans. Our Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program has two core objectives: to provide services to reintegrate veterans experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness into employment, and to stimulate the development of effective service delivery systems that address the complex challenges facing veterans who are experiencing homelessness. In fiscal year 2021, the Department awarded $52 million in HVRP grants. In performance year 2020, HVRP recipients placed 62% of exiting participants into employment, making an average of over $16 an hour, while also providing services to over 14,500 veterans who were experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, most American job centers had to initially close their doors, and many JVSG staff were temporarily reassigned as rapid response to support the significant increases in unemployment insurance claims. Due to the closure, many HVRP grantees developed new methods to continue providing services, while simultaneously leveraging new or reinvigorated relationships in the fight against veteran homelessness. For example, a Florida human resources professional and U.S. Army veteran who lost his job during the pandemic due to downsizing was connected to an HVRP grantee by the Department of Veterans Affairs Supportive Services for Veterans Family program. This led to him being hired as a full-time senior recruiter at a nearby company where he now earns $50 an hour. Despite the pandemic challenges, from March 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021, VETS provided services to more than 242,000 transitioning service members and their spouses in our portion of the Transition Assistance Program through a combination of virtual instructor-led and in-person employment workshops. VETS also launched a career workshop curriculum for military spouses, which is known as the Transition Employment Assistance for Military Spouses, or with the acronym TEAMS. On April 1st, 2021, VETS launched the Employment Navigator and Partnership Pilot at 13 military installations, which is providing transitioning service members and their spouses personalized assistance outside of the traditional workshops. And recent legislation extends existing authority for VETS to conduct an off-base transition training pilot designed to serve veterans and their spouses after separation from the military. VETS will be implementing this initiative early next calendar year. Also, you may be aware that the Hire Vets Act required the Secretary of Labor to establish a program by rule that solicits voluntary information from employers to recognize their efforts to recruit, employ, and retain veterans. It's called the Hire Vets Medallion Program, and this year, over 870 employers from across the nation submitted award applications. The official awards announcement will be made on November 10th. VETS looks forward to working with this committee and our many stakeholders and partners to provide support so that all veterans can have a good job and opportunity for advancement. I thank the committee for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to any questions that you may have.
They're by Zoom, these two.
I just want to thank the chair, the vice chair, ranking member.
I prefer
the honorable senator from Kansas is work in my absence. I had to go cast a vote at Indian Affairs Committee. And I want to thank you for your testimony, Secretary. And now I believe virtually we'll have Ron Burke, Deputy Undersecretary for Policy and Oversight at the Veterans Benefits Administration. And then after he gets done, I'm going to do my quick opening statement and follow up on some of the things the ranking member said too. And then we'll move on. So you are on, Ron Burke.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Moran, and members of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss veterans employment, education, and home loan opportunities. Accompanying me today is Ricardo Da Silva, Program Integration Officer from Education Service. VA is committed to assisting service members in their transition to civilian life. Whether education, employment, or purchasing a home, we are working to improve access and outcomes for veterans. Before I delve into how we're delivering for our veterans, I want to touch on an evolving crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed global and U.S. supply chain weaknesses, and we expect the manufacturing and distribution disruptions to continue for some time. As the virus spread, overall consumer demand decreased and industrial activity in turn decreased due to the lower consumer demand and effects of COVID-19. With the increasing level of vaccination globally and the end of lockdown in many nations, consumer demand increased dramatically, while supply chains continue to face big challenges, including worker shortages and limitations in access to raw materials and key components. VA is actively addressing these challenges, implementing near-term methods to ensure internal VA supply chain resiliency, including increased demand signal monitoring, identification of alternatives for preferred products, and treating medical products as enterprise assets. Effective national response requires a resilient public health supply chain anchored in domestic manufacturing capabilities so that care and preventative measures can reach patients. Sustaining the resilience of the supply chain is critical for ensuring the health and wellness of the nation, as well as for national security, and VA is working with the White House and executive branch agencies to develop and implement the actions identified in the national strategy for a resilient public health supply chain. A fundamental priority for the VA is ensuring our veterans realize opportunities worthy of their skills, talents, and service. In order to do so, VA engages with transitioning service members through the Transition Assistance Program, and once separated, through VA Solid Start to connect them with the resources and earn benefits. VA is also focused on helping veterans pursue their education, employment, and financial goals. It is in the midst of a 10-year digital GI Bill modernization initiative and achieved the first major milestone in September. Improvements through modernization will ensure we deliver benefits faster, provide better customer service, and strengthen compliance and oversight activities. In addition, innovative initiatives like the Veteran Rapid Retraining Assistance Program and Veteran Employment through Technology education courses provide opportunities for eligible beneficiaries to seek training for employment in high-demand fields. VA's Veteran Readiness and Employment Program works to provide a structured and standardized approach to employment services and has engaged in creating partnerships to promote employment services such as job leads, career fair events, and opportunities for non-paid work experience. With the need to increase support during these economically challenging times, VA launched a personalized career planning and guidance program for beneficiaries to receive counseling and support to help guide their career paths, ensure effective use of benefits, and achieve career goals. VA also aims to improve opportunities and promote sustainability through its economic development initiatives, which are focused on benefits and services, career connections, and financial literacy and well-being. Lastly, the mission of the Loan Guarantee Program is to maximize opportunities for veterans and service members to obtain, retain, and adapt homes. VA has been steadfast in its commitment to home retention during the COVID-19 pandemic by implementing new programs to assist veterans with VA guaranteed loans who requested forbearance, minimize foreclosures, and reduce stress on the servicing ecosystem, and help ensure they can afford future mortgage payments. We are grateful for the resources that Congress has provided and pledged to do all that we can to ensure they are used effectively and efficiently. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss these invaluable services to veterans. I'll also like to address the absence of the Principal Deputy Undersecretary for Benefits in today's hearing. His absence by no means indicates his lack of respect for the chairman, the ranking member, or this committee, And in fact, Mr. Frew values his relationship with Congress and avails himself for open dialogue with the chairman, the ranking member, this committee, or any member of Congress. I do apologize for the frustration caused by his absence. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my testimony. My colleague and I are prepared to respond to any questions that you or other members of this committee may have. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Undersecretary Burke. I appreciate your testimony. And I want to thank the ranking member for covering for me at the beginning. We have heard the testimony of the first two witnesses, so I'm not going to go into the statement of what I expected, but I want to thank you for what you put forth. And I'll have questions about that in a second. On the second panel, we're going to hear from some VSOs and school officials about how the VA programs are working for schools and students. During the pandemic, we've done a lot of work in recent years to improve these programs. But what more can we do to cut red tape, to make it easier for veterans to access education, employment, and home loan guarantee programs? And so we look forward to those after I get off my Q&A. As far as the absence of the gentleman that we had asked to come to this committee, and the fact that Mr. Burke, you had said he's open for dialogue for me and the ranking member and any committee member. And I appreciate that. But the truth is that having in front of the committee and being able to ask questions based off of what one of our other senators on this committee may bring up, a point that we may not have brought up, is critically important. We've done a lot of really good work on this committee, and we have. We've done it in a bipartisan way, and we've passed a lot of bills, I think, that are pretty critical to make sure that our veterans get treated with the benefits they've earned. Another job we have to do other than passing bills, though, is make sure those bills get implemented correctly. It's called oversight. And how we do oversight is our staffs work on oversight all the time. And we bring folks in front of this committee and ask them tough questions. And if they can't answer the questions, then of course, they're sent back to get the answers for those questions. And so the committee process is really, really important. And I get it. There are people that get booked and can't come to the committee hearing because at 3 o'clock they have maybe have an appointment set up that's been set up for months. But they're not the only one in the department that deals with this issue. And to not have a replacement for the person we initially asked for, there really is no excuse for that. There really isn't. And if the VA is so understaffed that there is only one person that deals with one specific issue and there's nobody else that can take their place, then we got a whole nother problem that we're going to have to deal with on this committee. So all I would say is I appreciate your, Mr. Burke, your description of what transpired. But the truth is that if that person couldn't make it because of previous commitment, there surely should have been another one that could have answered the tough questions. I'm not going to beat this horse any longer. I'll just tell you that we need to do better. That's all. Okay. So now for the Q&A. And by the way, Senator Moran is asking some questions. I will kick my questions to. I wasn't here who got here first, so. Senator Hirono, if you're here first, go ahead and go.
Just when I'm sucking on a thing here.
Oh, you can kick it over to Senator.
No,
House.
that's okay. So if you hear crunching noises, that's why. Okay, for Mr. Burke, the current hyper-competitive housing market has made buying a home in high cost of living states like Hawaii almost impossible for many families, including veterans. Have your organizations heard from veterans about home buying in the current market? And are there statutory or programmatic changes that you would recommend, especially for veterans in high cost of living areas in states? State of Hawaii, the average house costs almost $1 million. Really, how can a veteran or anybody else practically afford that? So what are some things that you all are doing to enable our veterans to buy a home?
Senator, thank you very much for your question. The housing market has been extremely challenging, as you and others are keenly aware, and I appreciate your interest in this matter. I will tell you that the Loan Guarantee Division in VBA has been doing extensive outreach and communications. We're working with folks in the industry to make sure that they are aware of the benefits of using VA home loans. We are increasing our oversight capabilities to look out for those that are engaged in fraudulent activities in this space, increasing the communications, working with the National Association of Realtors, and just really trying to ensure that folks understand the value of the VA home loan process. It is an area that we continue to monitor. We've increased our training capabilities, our oversight capabilities, our outreach to not only veterans, but again, those that are in the in industry, National Association of Realtors and the like. So we will continue to monitor. We want veterans to know that we do have in the loan guarantee world 2 programs to assist them during these difficult times. That is our partial claim payment program, and also the refund modification program that folks that may be struggling because of the impact of COVID-19 and economic strife should be taking advantage of through our loan guarantee program. So thank you for that question, ma'am.
So the loan guarantee program, does it account for areas like Hawaii where the cost of housing is so high that your loan guarantee portion is simply not enough to enable the veterans to afford these homes? Do you take that into account and make adjustments to your program?
Ma'am, I think in the loan guarantee space, they're constantly monitoring the differentials based on the cost of living from each state. And with respect to loan guarantees approach to varying cost of living, we are continuously looking, not just in loan guarantee, but across all of VBA, at ways to do continuous improvement. They're constantly looking at ways that they can propose, whether it's a regulatory change, a legislative proposal, process improvements. And right now, what we're finding is increased communication with folks in industry, and strengthening partnerships is one of the means that we're addressing. But yes, ma'am, we do appraisals for all of our home purchases. Those appraisals are designed to ensure that the asked price is proper. We actually have a reconsideration of value process in the event that there are some discrepancies there, but we will continue to look at ways to address the high cost of living areas.
Do you have data that shows how many of your veterans are able to purchase homes through your loan guarantee program and throughout the 50 states, so that you can make comparisons and make adjustments as necessary? Do you have that data?
Yes, ma'am, we do have that data. In fact, last year was a record-setting year for guaranteed home loans, 1.44 million. We can break that out by
Yes, please.
By region and provide that. Yes, ma'am.
By state.
By state. Yes, ma'am, we can.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
For you and Mr. Da Silva, so VA has several different programs to support student veterans on campus, and these include the Vet Success on Campus program, VSOC, which provides funding for campus-based counselors who can deliver comprehensive services for student veterans and their family members. For example, through academic and career counseling, benefits counseling, and referral services. Locally, this program has supported students at the University of Hawaii, which serves 3,500 student veterans statewide. Can you elaborate on the importance of programs like these for student veterans and their families? And do you think it would be helpful to expand these programs to more campuses? Because University of Hawaii, that's just one. There are other campuses.
Yes, Senator, thank you for that question. The Veteran Success on Campus program is actually extremely valuable. We have more than 86,000 student veterans that are under the umbrella, if you will, of this program and the work of our VSOCs. We have 264 schools that are inquiring about the additional utilization of our VSOCs. We are looking at, we're constantly assessing the need of how we distribute our resources. And we are looking for a potential FTE resource adjustment in the out years. The VSOC program, again, very successful. We're at over 100 different institutions across the United States. And again, 87 of our full-time employees are dedicated to that VSOC mission.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Senator Brown, are you still on, or did you have to run? Okay, Senator Tuberville, you're up. He's gone.
You lost him?
I lost him.
Okay. Ms. Devlin, thank you for being here today. Mr. Burke, making sure our veterans know about education, employment, and home loan opportunities is critical, especially in my state of Alabama, where we have 400,000 veterans. Ms. Devlin, in Alabama, out of every 10 residents is a veteran. So it's important to me that opportunities available to veterans, both in education and employment, are known and amplified. I'm focused on the gap in the nation's cybersecurity workforce. I think people coming straight out of service who are likely already trained in some kind of cyber could easily begin to fulfill the vulnerability. You know, we have 5,000 defense contractors alone in the state of Alabama. Fort Rucker moves 600 service members through TAP each year. How can the overall transition process be better leveraged to provide a seamless pipeline to get more veterans into cybersecurity?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. One of the things that we're doing is we have a pilot program called the Employment Navigator and Partnership Pilot Program. What that program is helping us to do in those 13 installations is to provide that one-on-one technical specialized assistance. It'll help us work with that service member to look at their unique skills, their abilities, their interests, and pair them up with the right occupations, and pair them with partners that can help focus on industries such as cyber. In addition, we have our new Eightfold AI pilot. It's a pilot that will match skills and opportunities with industry. We're preparing to pilot that in November. And that's an electronic matching system, which will look at employers and industries across the country and help match the service member to the industry in their community that they're going to be moving to. So we have several different initiatives that are aimed at that, not just for cyber, but for other industries. But in particular, we recognize the high impact and high need in cybersecurity. So we're definitely taking a look at that.
Are they used? Are these implemented pretty well?
The Employment Navigator is implemented. It was implemented in April. The Eightfold AI partnership, the one that's the electronic matching, we're going to be implementing that this coming fall.
Thank you.
Later this fall. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Burke, the American Rescue Plan included $386 million for the Veterans Rapid Retraining Assistance Program, which offers up to 12 months of training and unemployment assistance for veterans who are unemployed to enter a high-demand occupations. Almost 9 months later, 84% of the authorized and appropriated funds available to this program remain untouched. Can you and Ms. Devlin please discuss what outreach each department is doing to make unemployed veterans aware of this program?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I want to thank Congress for their support of VRAP as well. One thing I'd like to note is that we're actually seeing the participation and the interest in VRAP increase. We've got more than 2,100 participants currently in VRAP. There were over 10,000 applicants, with 6,938 of those receiving a certificate of eligibility. 128 veterans have already graduated. And the good news is, based on our outreach and our communication, the communication and outreach describing the value of VRAP, I will tell you that 804 training providers have partnered with us. So we believe that we're going to see the funds that came with this program committed at a higher rate. We're seeing their participation rate, the application rate, and those approved for the program increase. So we're encouraged by that, and that is building and increasing rather significantly as time goes by.
Ms. Devlin?
Yes, and if I may add, our American Job Center network across the country, our staff in those facilities are well educated on VRAP. So if a veteran enters one of those AJCs and is unfamiliar with the program and has eligibility, that staff, whether it's a disabled veteran outreach program specialist or other AJC staff, will refer the veteran to that program. So we're well equipped based on veterans who come and seek our services because they need employment, to teach them about other services, other benefits available to them through VA.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you and the ranking member for this hearing, and to our witnesses, thank you for being here. I have 3 questions for Mr. Burke. And Mr. Burke, I want to start by really building on the question that Senator Tuberville just asked. I recently introduced a bill with Senator Cornyn that would create a pilot program to provide cybersecurity training for veterans with a focus on employing veterans in the federal government. I believe we can train more veterans for technology careers, especially with the success of the VA's existing Vet Tech program, which allows veterans to gain computer experience. Mr. Burke, could you please speak to why Vet Tech is popular with veterans and the potential for other programs that train veterans for technology careers?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much, and thanks for your support and continued support with respect to Vet Tech. And I'll provide some information. I may ask my counterpart, Mr. De Silva, to jump in as well. But the Vet Tech program is increasingly popular. In fact, we exhausted the $45 million last year in August. We will expend this year's funds well before August, and have already expended or allocated more than $7 million of the $45 million in the month of October alone. 3,742 participants, over 2,700 graduates, 1,465 found employment with an average salary of more than $60,000. The program is available, is attractive to veterans because it has positive outcomes. Like I said, the number of folks that have found employment, the average salary of the employment, the fact that Vet Tech targets high demand occupations, and thank you to my partners in DOL, Ms. Devlin and her team, for the partnership on identifying that high demand occupancy list. And what I could say is that, again, the results as we continue to get folks graduating through the program, get employed, is raising interest. But again, this is one where we will run out of funds much earlier than August. And have already exhausted more than $7 million. And Mr. De Silva, if you have anything else you'd like to add about why this is interesting or why this is valuable to veterans, please feel free.
And Mr.
No, thank you.
I just would ask you to be pretty brief because I have 2 more questions.
I would just add that, again, the model works and that folks also, our training providers, see the value in bringing on veterans and putting them through this training, given their own military background and those soft skills that they have gained through their service.
Well, thank you. And I think it would be terrific to be able to get more of them to come into the federal service as well. So, Mr. Burke, I wanted to ask a question about public service loan forgiveness. This year, I introduced another bipartisan bill that allows service members who pause their student loan payments while deployed or on extended active duty orders to count that time toward their public service loan forgiveness. Earlier this month, the Biden administration announced that it would implement this change through executive authority and apply it retroactively so that veterans could benefit even if they've already finished their military service. That's really great news for veterans, but I'm concerned that many of those eligible may not hear about this change. So, Mr. Burke, how does the VA plan to reach out to veterans about these adjustments to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program to ensure that all those who are eligible for these benefits actually receive them?
Thank you for your question. Thank you for your support in this topic as well. I can tell you in our education service space, they've done a phenomenal job of reaching veterans, student veterans of all types across all of our areas. They use blogs, they use all social media platforms, constantly doing communications. Mr. De Silva can fill you in. He's actually heavily involved in some of those, but we have a very extensive outreach marketing capability within education service. And if you're interested, Mr. De Silva can provide some more details there.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Certainly, we partner also with other agencies. Thank you for the question. We partner with other agencies to make sure that those pieces are known to our student veterans. So we often do that with the Department of Education and others. And as Mr. Burke articulated, it's done normally through email, social media. We partner on videos. We believe very heavily in saturating the airwaves as much as we can and getting those resources and tools out to veterans and our service members.
Well, thank you very much. I am running out of time, so I will submit my third question for the record, but I do just want to note that I wanted to build on what Senator Hirono was asking about when it comes to the VA Home Loan Guarantee Program. What's happening in New Hampshire a lot is that the appraisals that your loan program are coming in low, and veterans don't always know that they can appeal those appraisals, and in the meantime, they're losing their opportunity to purchase. So it's making the loan program less popular and available in some ways to veterans than we would like it to be. So we'll submit this question for the record, and I'd look forward to your answer. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being either online or here to testify. Ms. Devlin, I was happy to hear that Cherry Point was picked as one of the Employment Navigator Partnership Program sites. I think it's a great opportunity for us to participate in the program. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the effectiveness of the NPP and then what you're likely to do with the learnings from the pilots moving forward?
Thank you for the question. The ENPP is very new. We just implemented it in April, so we don't have outcome metrics yet, but it is popular. We have seen so far 1,963 clients, of which 116 are military spouses so far. So it is popular, and what we're finding is that the partners are very engaged and very eager to supply data as well in terms of the outcomes that they're seeing. So we will have data at the completion of the pilot. And
what's the time frame for that?
We would like the pilot to run for a year before we look at outcome data.
Okay, very good. Mr. Burke, Vet Tech is another program that I'm excited about. We have a network of community colleges and universities in North Carolina that have programs specifically designed for transitioning veterans and actually active and reserve personnel. I was down there visiting just recently with a special program they're doing on cybersecurity. It's a great collaboration between public and private institutions down there. So what are you all doing to expand educational assistance and maybe looking out to some of these other programs that are working? I know it's working in North Carolina to expand the opportunities for tech training, filling a desperate supply chain of open jobs in North Carolina, across the country.
Well, sir, thank you again for your interest in this topic. We're very excited about Vet Tech. Vet Tech has been extremely popular. We continue to increase our comms and our outreach and our messaging, our partnerships. Again, we have great partnerships with other agencies, DOL being one certainly in this space as well. We have really capitalized on using our social media footprint in the education service, getting out there with partners, getting out there for folks that also have an interest in these high demand jobs. Vet Tech will continue to be popular. We look forward to Congress's continued support with Vet Tech. And again, the first month of this fiscal year, we've already allocated almost $8 million of the $45 million. So as this continues to serve veterans, it will help us place veterans in these very critical positions and vacancies across the United States.
What visibility do you all have into other programs, initiatives taken, like I was saying, our community college and university and private institution collaboration? To what extent should we do a better job of educating you all on that and see how it complements what you're doing with programs like Vet Tech?
I want to give my colleague, Mr. De Silva, an opportunity to jump in and provide some expertise there. And if we can't answer your question completely, I'll certainly take it for the record. But Ricardo, let me give you the opportunity to jump in there.
No. Thank you for the question. What we've done with Vet Tech specifically, sir, is we've looked to what others have done. We've tried to understand best practices and apply them to this program. So one area in the last year that we've heavily focused on is building out a Vet Tech employer consortium to accelerate those hiring opportunities for our students participating in Vet Tech. And so we're bringing together the training component through Vet Tech and then that hiring component through the employer consortium, hoping to pair veterans with the right training with companies seeking to fill that talent.
Thank you very much. Ms. Devlin, we've got a nonprofit organization down in Charlotte called the Veterans Bridge Home that has done extraordinary work for transitioning veterans. So can you speak to what more we should do to collaborate with organizations like Veterans Bridge Homes to fill the still unmet need out there in North Carolina, across the country? What more can we do, or what should we rethink in the way we're doing now?
Clearly, in this ecosystem, when it comes to helping veterans, it's great to partner as much as possible. We're open to those partnerships. We're happy to talk to that organization if we're not already partnering with them. We partner formally through ENPP, as you're aware. We actually recently opened up on the 21st of October the application process for Employment Navigator Partnership Pilot. so that if additional organizations are providing the types of services that we provide under the Navigator program, they can apply to become formal partners in that program as well. So we would invite any organizations, if they didn't see the announcement, to come to our website and take a look at the requirements to participate. And that might be another thing they might want to look at.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Tellis. I think I'm going to ask my questions now and then be able to go vote. But for Mr. Burke, this goes off the question that Senator Hassan asked about getting information out to the veterans about the programs that they're eligible for. You had talked about blogs and social media and outreach marketing. The fact is, though, that the GAO recently put out a report that found that many veterans don't know about VR&E benefits and recommended steps to provide them with more information. Could you tell me how the VA has responded to that report, and particularly how they've responded to the recommended steps?
Yes, sir. I can tell you that VA takes these recommended findings or recommendations seriously. We go through, we assess each of those and determine whether it's an initiative that we already have in place that will address the recommendations, or if there's something we need to put in play, or quite frankly, if we disagree, we engage in some dialogue about those recommendations. With respect to VR&E, I can tell you that VR&E is also in the midst of one of their largest modernization efforts, improving their invoice processing, a common finding. They're down to 0.01% error rate in their invoice processing, going electronic, going paperless, if you will, with their case files, 175,000 files scanned and digitized at this point. So VR&E is sending a lot of resources into not just their communications, not just program improvements, hearing feedback about even the rebranding of confusing words like vocational rehabilitation and changing it to veterans readiness and employment. So much like Education Service, Mr. Chairman, the VR&E department is also increasing their communications, their marketing, their use of social media, but also going back and making programmatic changes and improvements via modernization.
Appreciate that, but I want to go back to I appreciate all the information you gave me, but I want to go back to my original question, unless you don't know, and then you can get somebody that can answer, and that is, what did the department do with the recommended steps? Did they dispute them, or did they implement them, or did they do nothing?
I'll take that one for the record, sir, and we will get back to this committee with a specific response to those recommendations.
I appreciate that very much. I've heard from school officials in Montana and around the country that the important details about how to implement new policy changes are not communicated to schools. So, Mr. Burke, can you tell me how the VA can provide better training and communication to school officials about VA regulations? A recent change in the 8515 policy may be a good example to go off of.
Yes, sir, and I'll get an assist from Mr. De Silva here in a second as well, but I can tell you that one of the things that we've done in the Education Service is increase the amount of communication with the state approving officials and agents. They have recurring phone calls. The exchange of information has been improved over recent months. I think more work to be done. We've been expanding the conversations, the communication, so that word can get out to our partners more effectively. And Mr. De Silva, if you'd like to jump in and speak to this question a little bit more, that'd be appreciated.
Thank you for the question. In particular with schools, sir, we do hold monthly office hours, webinar style, every month with schools to cover topics, including 8515 on multiple occasions here in the last year. So that's one of our bigger venues to provide information to schools and receive questions that we then return via email, frequently asked questions. We also attend all the national conferences and provide more specialized training at those. For example, today a colleague was at the National Association of Veterans Professional Administrators providing information about the 8515 rule and other things. So we do try to come at schools at varying avenues, including with state approving agencies like Mr. Burke mentioned, and through those monthly office hours.
Okay. Ms. Devlin, I'll try to make this quick. We're seeing unemployment around 3.9% for veterans. That's better than it was last year, but I'm concerned we don't have much data on underemployment for veterans and their families. The pandemic has exacerbated inequalities in the labor market, particularly for severely disabled veterans, women veterans, veterans of color. What has the Labor Department done to reach underserved and underemployed populations?
Thank you for that question. That is one of our priorities, is reaching the underserved veteran population. The most important thing is we first have to identify where they are, what their issues are, and we're looking at data to help inform that. So as we conduct our data analysis, we will use that information to identify who we need to reach and where and how. I will tell you, though, the post-employment salaries really look promising. On average, from our homeless veteran reintegration program, the average salary is over $15 an hour. So the other thing that we're focusing is not just any job, but quality jobs. And what we're finding from our programs is that veterans who leave the program successfully employed are leaving the program in well-paying jobs.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. Senator Moran's going to take the gavel.
Chairman, thank you. Mr. Burke, having both you and Ms. Devlin at the table is an opportunity to discuss how the VA and the Department of Labor can work together at the highest levels of VBA and vets to collaborate on efforts to get veterans successfully transitioned out of the military and into meaningful careers. Over the years, we've seen VA duplicate many of DOL vets' efforts and create programs within VA to provide services to transitioning service members as they re-enter the workforce. Instead of duplicating efforts, how can VBA, working with DOL vets, coordinate and collaborate in the veteran customer experience when it comes to transition from active duty to civilian life?
So, sir, thank you for the question. I'll take that first. And I will say that having had many years of a positive working relationship with Ms. Devlin before her current role, I think the partnership and the history makes it much easier to collaborate on things such as this. I will tell you that one of the things that's important when we talk about education, we talk about employment, we talk about housing, is really having an effective transition program. We do partner already with DOL in the transition space. I will say since Ms. Devlin's arrival in DOL, those communications have been a little more robust and a little bit more active, and those have been greatly appreciated. And so basically, to serve the many, we must partner with many. And I think the approach that's being taken between VBA and DOL is a strengthened partnership. There was already a good one, but making that better and trying to find a way to unite forces and programs and technologies to do a better job of that transition from the service member in their military life into the civilian world. We are taking advantage of things like the personalized career planning. We have, of course, our TAP program, both online and in person, and we'll continue to partner with DOL. And I'll defer to Ms. Devlin for her comments as well.
Ms. Devlin.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. We do have a great collaborative relationship with VBA. In fact, many formal collaborations as well as informal. In the formal sphere, we have our governance over transition assistance program is very formal. Ms. Cheryl Rawls is my counterpart on that, and Mr. Mansell from DOD. So the three of us are strongly connected on the oversight of the transition assistance program. There's also been a longstanding memorandum of understanding between Department of Labor vets and VBA's VR&E program, because that is really a local initiative, but that is implemented from a national sense to make sure that it happens everywhere in communities across the country. And that's where our Disabled Veteran Outreach Program coordinators at DOL Vets are collaborating with VR&E counselors. Because when you think about it, so Department of Labor is the federal authority on employment. And when it comes to veterans, VETS is the agency responsible for veterans employment, but of course we must work with VA because VA has all of the benefits programs that can invest for veterans in training, the GI Bill, VRAP, VR&E, et cetera. So we must work together to make sure that we are not duplicating, but enhancing each other's services and making sure that there's a wide safety net for every veteran to get everything that they need from the employment realm and from the training realm.
Ms. Devlin, your answer to the question reminds me of your testimony in your confirmation hearing in which I was convinced that you were going to work well together, and I'm glad to hear it being said that you are. Are there any concrete examples? It's certainly useful for you to highlight, you and the VA to highlight the importance of working together. But is there any evidence that it's happening? What can you point to, you or Mr. Burke, that would suggest here is an example of where something turned out better as a result of the way we're now doing things?
That's a great question. I think with respect to the TAP program, for example, or just transition in general, we've been working with VA on the military to civilian readiness program, or not program, but really paradigm, which really looks at the military to civilian transition from the 1 year pre and 1 year post separation. It's something that I believe is truly important because transition doesn't end with the DD-214. It continues beyond that. And VA and DOL are in conversations about the customer experience and really taking a look at how we can get deeper knowledge about the experience of our transitioning service members as they go through transition and become veterans. So that's an example of something that we're collaborating on between VA and DOL. That's a new initiative that I think will make massive improvements as we learn by hearing from the voice of the veteran, him or herself, what they experienced during transition and what could have gone better.
Mr. Burke, anything that you would add for example purposes?
Yes, sir. I'm going to go to something Ms. Devlin mentioned a bit ago, and that's the relationship between VBA's employees, the employment coordinators, and DOL's employees in the VR&E space. We have more than 70 employment coordinators across the country, and they work hand in glove with these DVOP employees from DOL. And the evidence would be, we had, despite COVID, a very impressive positive outcome numbers in the VRE world in FY21, and that continues. The partnership between DOL and VBA in the world of veteran employment is really captured, again, is this example in the VR&E space. I think very productive outcomes, very tangible outcomes, and that partnership will just continue to strengthen.
Thank you both. Let me just say that what you're doing, or what needs to be done at the VA and the Department of Labor, is hugely important to the country at a time in which we need more workers, more people at work. Our veterans create a significant opportunity for that to occur. It is important beyond just the general nature of our economy and the need for workers. My experience is that in many instances, the time in which our military men and women are most vulnerable to suicide is at a time in which they're transitioning from active duty to becoming a veteran. And employment is certainly a way to earn a living, but it also is an opportunity to provide purpose and meaning to life. And so I know that neither one of you would treat this just as a matter of paperwork or a check in the box. This is really about saving people's lives, enhancing their quality, and making our nation function better. So it's individual and corporate both. And please know that anytime that I and this committee can be a success to make sure that you have the necessary tools, we're interested in doing so. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you very much, Senator Moran, and thank you all for your good work and for being here today. Many members of our veteran community and many of our active duty service members have a hard time getting VA guaranteed loans by means of the traditional evaluation, often because they lack traditional lines of credit. The result is to sideline millions of veterans from buying a home. The DoD expects our military personnel and families to relocate around the world, our active duty service members and others to buy new homes, to find places to rent. The VA home loan is a hard-earned benefit that our veterans should be able to access. I introduced, along with Senator Tim Scott, a measure called Building Credit Access for Veterans Act. It's bipartisan, obviously, and it enables and expands reliable access to housing and mortgage credit for our nation's veterans, current service members, by streamlining and formalizing alternative methods of credit scoring for veterans. These practices have already been adopted outside the VA. They would be an enormous boon to veterans if they could be adopted for VA-backed loans. And the bill would also require a report to Congress on how many veterans participate in the program and how they're affected. Mr. Burke, is this a significant problem, and have you heard from veterans that they have a hard time accessing credit?
So, Sarah, thank you for your interest in the loan guarantee world and ensuring that our veterans are able to secure homes. We have heard from veterans about the importance of having alternative means of verifying credit other than just a solid credit history. As you know, the conventional means is a credit history. But in lieu of that, we are open to and able to reviewing one's ability to, secure and maintain housing by alternate means. For example, a positive history of maintaining, rental payments and things of that nature are being utilized. I don't have the numbers as far as the percentage of folks that are challenged with this, but I do believe that we are, again, utilizing rental history as a means in lieu of a credit report in some cases, and certainly happy to work with Congress and give commentary and assistance on any proposed legislation.
Would you back that legislation?
To be honest with you, sir, I'd have to do a technical assist with some subject matter experts, but we're happy to work with Congress to do that technical assist.
Well, I appreciate that. Let me ask, since you have heard from some veterans about it, are there alternatives now available that you would recommend to veterans if they don't have the traditional sources?
I know positive rental history is one that during my preparation for this hearing was one that was highlighted as an important one to highlight not only today but in our communication with veterans. And again, I can take this particular question for the record and come up with some more specific recommendations, and we can work with Congress on that as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blumenthal, thank you. I think virtually appearing is Senator Blackburn. Appearing in person is Senator Bozeman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, Ms. Devlin. In your testimony, you highlighted the Employment Navigator Partnership pilot and some of its successes with transitioning service members and their spouses. Pilot program, again, as you know, has been implemented at 13 military installations. What does DOL Vets plan to expand at other installations?
Thank you for the question. I think what's important to do is to evaluate the success of the program before considering expansion. It is fairly new. We implemented in April. It has been popular, and our partners are doing a good job helping our service members in the areas that they provide services. So we have high expectations for the program, but the responsible thing to do is really to get the data on the outcomes and then consider whether expansion makes sense.
No, I'm hearing it. It has been popular. Any preliminary stuff? Do you see any areas maybe that we need improvement or ways to change? Or?
Preliminarily, and I don't have the data with me, but we are seeing employment outcomes and satisfaction from the participants.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Mr. Burke, I think Senator Moran addressed this earlier, but I just want to reinforce, I also am hearing from fellow Arkansans that veterans are having difficulty purchasing a home using their VA loan. The combination of the pandemic and inflation has increased home prices and created appraisal issues for our veterans. So I guess, again, can you tell me what VBA is doing to address the issue? And is there any effort to work with the housing industry to support veterans during this challenging time? And then also, I know there's areas where simply the workforce is teleworking, things like that. Is that part of this problem? Give me some reasons that we're bogging down with our veterans trying to get loans.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your interest. This is very important to us in VBA, as it should be. And I can tell you there are a couple of things that are interfering with veterans' ability to use VA loan in some cases. First off, cash offers are hard to beat. It's extremely competitive, and in this market, we're seeing some folks opt for a cash offer instead of any other type of means. But the VA home loans are still a very, positive avenue. It's the best in the world, to be honest with you. 1.44 million loans were guaranteed in FY21, over 447 billion. We are working with the National Association of Realtors to communicate all the benefits for veterans. We're not just communicating with veterans, we are getting out in the industry and letting them know that the benefit of the no down payment, the competitive interest rates, limited closing cost, all the benefits associated, but it is a really difficult market at the moment. Despite the challenges, again, 1.44 million loans guaranteed, that's 15.6% more than the prior fiscal year, despite the impact of COVID. The grant approvals up 12.5% from the prior year. There's still work to be done here, but we are expanding our communications, working with the National Association of Realtors and all the partners in the industry to educate them on the true benefits of the VA home loan process.
And do you have any ideas about the appraisal issue specifically?
So with the appraisals, I'll tell you that an appraisal is required for a VA home loan. We do a lot of auditing of the appraisals, a lot of reviews to ensure that the oversight and the accuracy of the appraisals are on point. The processing time to actually get an appraisal is phenomenal in the VA space. I can tell you that 8 days to get an appraisal done in our top 10 states, and those 10 states make up 56% of our volume. The rest of the U.S. average is 10 days, so speed is not an issue. And if there is a question about an appraisal being low, not only a lender, but a veteran can actually request a reconsideration of the value, and those reviews are done in an expedited manner to ensure that the appraisals are actually fair value.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Manchin, virtually.
I'm here, sir.
The floor is
So kind of you,
yours.
Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. This is to anybody that would like to answer this. In addition to my role in the committee, I chair also the Cyber Subcommittee and Armed Services Committee. And a reoccurring issue that has come up in my conversations with Ranking Member Senator Rounds is our security clearance process. Our veterans who receive security clearances during their service at great cost to the taxpayer, and it's coupled with the experience, it gives them a competitive edge in the private sector when they transition. My question is this: are we adequately taking advantage of transferring their clearances to influence more hiring appeal for our veterans?
Thank you for the question. What I would tell you is that one of the things that we will do with this eightfold AI partnership that we will be starting in later this fall, around November, is really looking at the information that veteran has to offer in terms of their skills, their abilities, their credentials, and even some of the skills that you wouldn't typically see on a resume. But obviously, clearance can be a very valuable asset. And so that would be something that would be incorporated into this electronic matching system to help identify this service member and eventually veteran as somebody who has a clearance, so that they can be matched up with jobs that require that, because that is clearly a critical asset. I don't know if my VA colleagues have anything to
No, it does. I know it's extremely valuable. I know how hard it is and how long it takes, but when they have this type of experience level and they already have a clearance, I don't know, are we having a hard, I guess my follow-up would be, how would you change the program to enable federal, state, and certain privately owned businesses to hire a veteran that already has the security clearance? That should not be an impediment. It should be a tremendous asset.
Indeed, it is a tremendous asset. So I'm not an expert on the security clearance process, but I can tell you what I'm trying to express here is that we will leverage that asset and make sure that when we're marketing this individual to employers, that is clearly articulated, that that's an asset that they hold, so that we can match them up to those jobs that are in high demand.
Yeah. Well, there might be a person that might not match up for the job, but they have the clearance and people are looking for clearance, and maybe they can make that job turn into something very beneficial for them. I wouldn't rule them out. There's just not that many people, and it's hard to get clearances today. So I would use that as a tremendous valued tool. My other question is, on a given day, West Virginia has about 90 to 100 VA vacancies. We have four VA hospitals and hundreds of other across the federal government, as you know. What can we do to incentivize more veterans to apply to these federal job openings? How can we lower their barriers so that they're able to enter when applying?
Senator, this is yes, sir. Senator, from the VBA perspective, I can tell you there's a phenomenal opportunity right now to increase veteran hiring and to assist with our backlog and the effects of Blue Water Navy, the addition of presumptive conditions. We're hiring more than 2,000 claims processors. There's 2,000 opportunities for veterans to raise their hand and join what I think is the greatest mission of the federal government, and that is serving those that have served. We will continue to look at opportunities to bring veterans into the federal workforce, and through our VRE program, and this kind of goes to your first question, of our 964 vocational rehabilitation counselors and our 70 plus employment coordinators, they will look at the strengths and the skill sets and the things that veterans bring to the table.
Let me follow up, Mr. Burke, if I can follow up. It's my understanding that the USA jobs process is unnecessarily difficult. So have any of our witnesses today successfully been hired through the USA jobs? And what are your unfiltered thoughts? Just give it to me if we can help you. That's all.
Sir, to be honest with you, I haven't applied for a job through USA Jobs in many years, so I have no
Do we know
recent
anybody that
experience.
has and the difficulties you might have run into?
Thank you for the question. I'll actually take that. I am a mentor. I mentor transitioning service members, and I have helped them navigate the USA job system. It can be complex. I will tell you that one of the key things about the USA jobs system is you have to have attention to detail. There are questions asked in the system that you have to answer, and you have to upload all of the requirements. So yes, can it be complex? It can be.
How can we streamline it? How do we streamline it? I mean, you're seeing it from the inside out, and I appreciate you being so honest with us on that. Help us fix that. So it sounds to me like an average person is not going to be able to go through this process unless they have help from someone like yourself.
I'm happy to take that. I think that one of the challenges is that when you submit your resume for a federal job, it doesn't always have all of the components that we need in the federal environment to evaluate. For example, do you have veterans preference? Do you meet the key qualifications? And what we don't want to do is take a chance on missing a really qualified candidate because their resume didn't capture all the items. So it is, I think, a balancing act in order for us to make sure that we can get all the qualified candidates in the door by giving them the opportunity to add the additional information that may not be on their resume.
Thank you so much. And again, I want to thank the chairman for doing such an outstanding job with all the help of his ranking member, Senator Moran. They do a fantastic job running this committee. Thank you both.
Well, thanks for that compliment, Senator Manchin. You can keep speaking because of that. Now, I just have one question. It's kind of a little follow-up on Senator Manchin. Does the USA Jobs website, and then Senator Blackburn, you'll be up. Does the USA Jobs website have to be that complex?
That's a great question. I have navigated the website both with people that I mentor and also myself historically. I don't think it's incredibly complex. I think where people sometimes get stuck is that there are questions that are asked that sometimes people aren't prepared to answer.
Okay.
And sometimes veterans in particular tend to be more modest about their skills and abilities than what we need them to do when they answer questions.
So very complex versus incredibly.
There you go. Senator Blackburn, virtually.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Devlin, I want to come to you and right along the same line of questioning that Senator Manchin had for you. Fort Campbell, of course, they're in Tennessee, and as you well know, instead of residing in Kentucky, most of those individuals live in Tennessee and they want to work closer to Nashville, somewhere there in Middle Tennessee. And what we have seen, and we have members of our team who have retired out from Fort Campbell. They're very active with that community. And just as you were saying, underappreciating the skill set that they've developed, working through the technology, the mentorship, I think, is so vitally important. You talked about serving as a mentor, but I think what gets lost is this interagency coordination between DOD, DOL, vets, VA, and then translating that to these local employers that would like to hire these individuals. So what is your plan and what is a timeline for kind of bringing these pieces together and having that mentorship program for not only the enlisted, but for their spouse, so that they begin to make this transition together. So lay out kind of a timeline and how you all plan to approach that to get your arms around this, because we continue to fund the program and we continue to hear there are stumbling blocks and unresolved issues.
Thank you for the question. So I'll give you a few pieces of information. The Employment Navigator program at the 13 military installations, mentorship is one of the services provided. We actually have a partner, American Corporate Partners, who is one of the 9 partners in the pilot program, and that is exactly the service that they provide. So we're through this pilot evaluating how well this mentorship, as well as the other services such as wraparound, apprenticeship, training, networking, employment opportunities.
Okay, so what is your timeline for completing the evaluation and saying this is worth the time and money and this is not?
The pilot will be completing its first year in March, and then we'll be assessing the data to look at the outcomes of the program.
Okay, so we can expect some certainty and a way forward from you all by when?
Well, we will evaluate the data after March, and what I would say to you is by the end of fiscal year 22, we should have some data to report in our next congressional report on all of our statistics and performance.
Okay, so let's say then we're a year away, right?
A year away, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so a year away from hearing this is the path forward. So then how long do you think it will take you to make adjustments and to reshape the existing program so that we have that certainty?
Well, I will tell you, though, that we are currently providing these services. So we're doing this now at the 13 installations. These navigators are providing one-on-one assistance to service members and their spouses right now. So far, we have worked with 1,963 service members and spouses. So it's working now. We're getting preliminary feedback that the participants are satisfied with the program, that they are receiving the outcomes that they're looking for. But to get the thorough data that would really help us analyze whether this program should be expanded or what our next steps would be, that's the data that we won't have until later. But our American Job Center network is America's public workforce system, and we are in communities around the entire country. And we have individuals who are trained, disabled veteran outreach program specialists, local veteran employment representatives. These individuals are trained to connect service members, veterans, and military spouses to employment opportunities in their community. And they can help them with their resume, with the skills, with how to translate their military occupational specialty skills to civilian sector jobs. So we have these systems in place now, and we do know that we need to do a better job of marketing them. And one of the things that we're working on this year is to conduct more effective marketing to get the information out to individuals who may need these services.
Yeah, well, my time's about to expire, but I hope that you all appreciate, for us, this is a matter of how you scale this up. You've got a pilot program. You say you've helped 1,096 so far of veterans and spouse. At Fort Campbell, we have 400 per month that are retiring out. And that could be a number of 800 if you look at veteran and staff, or I should say as many as a universe of 800. So what we are very interested in is what that collaboration is, how you're rolling that forward, and how you plan to scale this up so that it is more seamless. And as someone is enlisted and serving, they know as they get ready to transition out that this program is going to be right there for them. They're going to roll into that as a next step, and it is going to help place them with their skill set in the private or public sector. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moran.
Chairman, thank you. One last question. Mr. Burke, do you have any assessment on the impact of on VBA if it's necessary to terminate employees at the VA due to them being unvaccinated with the mandate?
Yeah, sir. Thank you for that question. That's certainly not something I'm prepared to comment on today. I'm wholly focused on the education, employment, and loan guarantee. But I could certainly, if you're asking me for my personal opinion, I quite honestly don't have one, sir.
That's probably a safe answer, but it isn't one that I think you or anyone else can easily dismiss. And I know, in fact, today my colleagues and I inquired of the Secretary in writing related to this question. But as we're talking about your ability to deliver services to veterans, both at the VA and at the Department of Labor, your workforce is important too. And I think it's important for you to have the necessary resources to meet the needs of veterans and their employment and their transition. It would be useful for me, perhaps the committee, to have an understanding of what the VA's intentions are if they are unable to keep their workforce in place. So perhaps you may highlight to the Secretary the letter in which we're inquiring as to this topic. Chairman, thank you.
Will do, sir, and I hope your grandchild's doing well.
Oh, nice ending, and that allows me to say to Secretary Devlin, thank you for raising a good son, and I wish him well and safety in his service.
Well, thank you, the folks on the first panel. I appreciate your input, and we're going to go to the second panel now. We're going to hear from veteran service organizations and school officials. We've got 4 folks we're going to hear from, 2 of them virtually, 2 of them in person. Joe Schumacher, the Director of Veteran Services at Montana State University. Go Cats. Joe is there virtually. We got Dr. Arthur DeGroat, Executive Director of the Military and Veterans Affairs at Kansas State University.
Mr. Chairman, that gives me the opportunity to say one more time we're aligned because we also can say Go Cats.
There you go. And then we've got Patrick Murphy. Both these last 2 gentlemen are in person, Legislative Director of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And finally, virtually, we have Justin Monk, Policy Associate from the Student Veterans of America. We're going to start with you, Mr. Schumacher. I'd like you to, all of the folks testifying, limit your time to 5 minutes. Your entire written statement will be a part of the record. Go ahead, Joe.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Moran, members of the committee, I want to thank you for the invitation to share on the topic of the student veteran experience and the work being done at Montana State University. I'm joining you from the beautiful campus of MSU in Bozeman, Montana, where I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Veteran Services and the school certifying official. I'm a 5th-generation Montanan, a combat veteran, and a product of the post-9/11 GI Bill and the very center I lead today. MSU has a proud history of serving veterans and their families. This past February, we were recognized as one of the top 10 most military-friendly universities amongst our peers. We are proud of that recognition and believe it speaks to the heart of our mission as the land-grant university in our state. At MSU, we educate the sons and daughters of Montana, create access, and partner with our students to achieve positive outcomes in their lives and in the lives of their families. We are committed to doing our part for the future of Montana and our nation, and believe in the transformative power of education. This fall, as we remember the 20th anniversary of 9/11 and reflect on 20 years of serving combat veterans, we also recognize a few milestones at MSU. We celebrated our 10th anniversary of the Veteran Support Center, a space created to serve the surging number of post-9/11 veterans coming home, a space made possible in large part to the partnership of the chairman of this committee. Next month, the day after Veterans Day, we will cut the ribbon on a new center, twice the size of our current space, and named after local Medal of Honor recipient Staff Sergeant Travis Atkins. MSU and the state of Montana have invested in this space, invested in dedicated staff, and invested in the very futures of veterans who walk through our doors. We believe in this mission so much, it is built into our strategic plan. We are grateful for the partnership of those on this committee and the partnership of the Department of Veterans Affairs to serve those who have served. A shining example of this partnership and the outcomes we can achieve came in the spring of 2020 when our nation was being hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus had made its way to Southwest Montana, and while on spring break, we made the decision to transition to a virtual environment for the remainder of the term. Practitioners like myself immediately saw very real challenges when it came to administering benefits based on our policies and regulations at the time, particularly as it related to the housing stipend, the piece of funding that allows veterans to pursue their educational goals while still fulfilling their financial responsibilities to their families. Through swift communication and the spirit to listen and learn, legislation was drafted, laws were signed, and policy was implemented that specifically addressed our issues so quickly that not a single veteran at MSU was negatively impacted by that transition. I bring this to you today as an example of the work we can do together when we communicate, when we listen, and when we learn from one another. I ask that we keep this outcome in mind as we face current challenges in policy implementation. As we navigate the implementation of new laws such as the Isaacson and Roe Act, I ask that we remember to listen and ask questions. Ask questions of those on the ground and in the trenches. Come to Montana and be inspired by those who want to partner with you to be good stewards of the investments made by our nation in those trading in their boots and uniforms for backpacks and school books. We see many challenges on the horizon. Campuses across the nation still struggle with the effects of COVID-19, rising costs of living, and failing infrastructure. These are all issues Americans face. They can just be particularly challenging for veterans who are also navigating this terrain while still fighting with the wounds and scars from their time in the military. Making that transition was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, and I would not have been successful if it weren't for the investments made by MSU and the VA. If we can relieve some stress in certain areas of veterans' lives, this opens up mental and emotional energy to take on the day and find success. Mental health and suicide prevention are priorities for us at MSU, and I'm proud to share that any student veteran who reaches out for help will receive that help when they need it, free of charge. Mental health challenges and suicide continue to cripple our state. We unfortunately rank near the top every year in these categories. Just this past week, we lost a student utilizing the post-9/11 GI Bill to suicide. Last month, the Department of Veterans Affairs released their annual report on national veteran suicide prevention, and it showed that we have made some progress. However, we still lose 17 veterans a day to suicide, something that is preventable. Suicide cripples families, communities, and our nation. We need to do more. More training, more resources, and infrastructure to combat the factors we see in Montana, and more partnership with local organizations who are doing the work on the ground. We have shown that together we can accomplish great things and achieve excellent outcomes if we listen to each other and work together. You have partners, and we are ready to get to work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Moran, and members of this committee for your time and attention. I welcome any questions at this time.
Joe will have questions after the other three get done testifying, but we appreciate your statement. Dr. Arthur DeGroat, you're up.
Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Moran, and members of this committee, as a third-generation Army officer, I am honored for this opportunity to address you about my insights on the challenges of post-9/11 era veterans' transition to productive civilian lives after their service. I address you today as a combat veteran, a human science researcher, a practitioner of transition assistance in both higher education and nonprofit veteran service organizations, and as a personal and professional consultant. Because of my diverse background immersed in this issue, I believe I offer you a unique and relevant perspective upon this life event of contemporary veterans' transition. While I could simply affirm some elements of success from my work on the front lines of this effort, I believe that you deserve a more compelling insight of the larger issues of veteran transition. My formal written testimony offers 9 pages of my discoveries from research and practice of the inherent challenges of post-9/11 era veterans, the true nature of this social phenomena, and examples of evidence-based practices that increase success. Given time limitations with this hearing, I wish to emphasize 7 major points from my written testimony. First, I believe we are operating without a coherent national evidence-based strategy for veterans transition assistance, which in my view explains much of our lack of success despite effort and commitment. Secondly, it is clear from human capital and business sciences that most military service today does not yield the tangible skills required directly for civilian workplace, which is often sector-specific. This has been a documented trend starting in the 1950s, highlighting increasing specialization of modern military skills, knowledge, and abilities, and of little use to private industries directly. Thirdly, that the post-9/11 era GI Bill is not serving as the dominant transition mechanism that current veterans need or as previous generations benefited from. This is more about it not being utilized properly than its design. Fourthly, our veteran unemployment statistics do not capture discouraged veterans who are capable workers despite their failure to transition successfully, indicating that the scale and opportunity of remediating transition assistance is much larger than commonly understood. Fifth, from my exploratory research, a successful transition assistance effort demands 5 essential factors. Many of these are not being addressed today, in my opinion. First, transitioning veterans need proper coaching to enable a proper mindset concerning the challenges and rewards of transition. Secondly, they also need to acquire new social tools needed to socialize into the civilian world as an independent adult, many of which have not been in that world prior to their military service. Thirdly, the reality is that transition cannot be done alone. Mediated assistance is essential through all stages of this dynamic process, especially in the latter stages, meaning beyond their transition from the military service, to expand them beyond institutional connections. Fourthly, and perhaps most difficult for our veterans, is the activation of self-realization skills needed to acquire a new non-military personal identity that results from seeing their new civilian world in new ways. And lastly, our assistance programs need to equip our veterans with cross-boundary skills, allowing the veteran to muster the mobility skills needed to negotiate their own lives without institutional dependence that we see today. In my work over the past 15 years, I have found very few assistance programs that meet these 5 imperatives. My 6th major point to emphasize today, and I never intended to define this, is that transitioning from military to civilian is stressful and puts veterans into the highest risk category of physiological and behavioral illness. I applied the foundational sociological tool, the Holmes and Rahe Social Readjustment Scale, to our veteran population, which has not previously been done, to realize how dangerous and how risk and stressful that this phenomena is. Like Senator Moran mentioned, I do believe our veteran suicide phenomenon is associated with transition failure. My 7th point is that I have found that a concierge type or human-in-the-loop assistant model yields exceptional results, but this practice is rarely utilized, where instead we use large group briefings and an over-reliance on giving veterans web-based resources on their own are common methods of assistance. In closing, and most importantly, I believe that a holistic approach to preparing and mentoring veterans incorporated into a national strategy is essential to better serve these valuable citizens as they navigate the transition process into a successful civilian lives after their service. I stand ready and committed to continue my work towards this end. Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Moran, this concludes my testimony. I welcome any questions. Thank you.
There will be questions, Dr. DeGroat. Appreciate your testimony. We'll go with Patrick Murphy next. Patrick Murray, I'm sorry. I made you Irish. Sorry. Maybe you are Irish.
Just a little bit, sir. Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Moran, and members of the committee, on behalf of the men and women of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States Annex Auxiliary, thank you for the opportunity to provide our remarks on these important topics today. With the looming expiration date of December 21st for student veteran COVID protection measures, there is an urgent need to extend these protections as circumstances that require them still remain. If these student veterans are not able to receive the monthly housing allowance or work-study stipends they counted on, they'll be forced to adjust their budgets, potentially resulting in the inability to pursue their education and eventually achieve their employment goals. We urge Congress to quickly pass legislation that extends all student veteran COVID protections that are still necessary today. Gainful employment is an integral part of every veteran's lives. VA offers a few important programs to help achieve this. The VR&E program has successfully helped many service-connected veterans pursue employment and education opportunities. However, the VFW remains concerned about the high caseloads VR&E counselors maintain, as it limits the amount of time they can spend with veteran clients assessing their current needs, goals, and what constitutes meaningful employment for each veteran. The VFW recommends the VA Office of the Inspector General conduct an assessment of the VR&E program staff to determine the average amount of time each counselor spends working with a veteran, the rate of staff turnover, the length of time between counselor engagement, and the length of employment veterans are placed into through the VR&E program. The early success of programs like VetTech show that an investment in veterans' economic outcomes is incredibly beneficial. The VFW asked for full funding of the VetTech program, up to $125 million, to help get as many veterans gainfully employed in high-demand jobs as quickly as possible. Positive employment and education outcomes can be achieved due to a successful transition. The VFW believes a proper and well-rounded transition from the military is one of the most important things our service members need in order to ease back into our society with minimal hardships. To that extent, the VFW places great emphasis on ensuring transitioning service members receive the best counseling and mentorship before they leave military service. The VFW's accredited service officers in our Benefits at Discharge Delivery, or BDD program, provide pre-discharge claims representation at 24 bases around the country and are available for transitioning service members during TAP. While their primary role is to help service members navigate their VA disability claims, They are also able to assist with many other available benefits and opportunities. This past year, between individual meetings and classroom briefings, the VFW met with over 14,000 service members and collected 1,100 surveys from these individuals. Some of the data was expected considering the unprecedented changes due to COVID, but other numbers suggested that there's still a lot of improvement needed within TAP regardless of the pandemic situation. While there was slight improvement regarding the timely attendance of TAP classes, 40% of service members are still not attending at least 6 months prior to separation. Additionally, we were very surprised to see that almost 60% reported not participating in any of the 3 specific tracks that were made mandatory as part of the formal curriculum last year. The VFW is greatly concerned some of these new mandates are not being adhered to. Additionally, per code, each transitioning service member shall meet in person or by video conference with a counselor before beginning the formal counseling to receive information regarding resources located in the community in which the member will reside after separation, retirement, or discharge. Our surveys and responses from our BDD representatives indicate these connections are not happening as described. In the recent Isaacson Rowe Benefits Improvement Act, there were grants made eligible to community organizations who specialize in transition. TAP cannot be everything for everybody, but there are outside groups in specific communities that can provide specialized resources to transitioning service members. If these connections to local resources are not being made, then these grants and opportunities will not be fully utilized. We know this committee has done a great job focusing on transition, but we ask this committee and its members to help focus DoD attention to ensure that proper administration of TAP is being done through DoD. Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Moran, this concludes my testimony. I'm prepared to answer any questions you or the committee members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Appreciate your testimony. Justin Monk, you are up next.
Thank you, Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Moran, and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing Student Veterans of America to testify on improving veterans' education and employment opportunities after service. With more than 1,500 on-campus chapters, Student Veterans of America is committed to the empowerment of yesterday's warriors. Through a supportive network of chapter leaders, SVA works to transform the skills and experience of student veterans to ensure they achieve their greatest potential. Before discussing the broader implications of the pandemic's effect on veteran education benefits, I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity to encourage the committee to continue proactively supporting student veterans through the ongoing pandemic. This committee has been incredibly responsive to the needs of student veterans over the last 18 months. Unfortunately, as COVID continues to impact us all, that support is still needed, both through an extension of existing temporary protections and continued work around what protections can be made permanent for future national emergencies. Given that the temporary protections expire in December and students are already registering for next semester's classes, Congress must quickly alleviate any doubts about whether student veterans' benefits will be protected in the year to come. Over the course of the past few months, we've heard numerous concerns from student veterans in schools, both domestic and abroad, about difficulties complying with the recent Isaacson Rowe and Thrive Act changes. Both bills establish numerous excellent protections for student veterans, and SVA continues to be grateful for the incredible work behind the scenes to put them into place. As is the case at times with large-scale efforts like these, during implementation, we discovered that there were some unintended consequences in some of the more substantial provisions. My written testimony goes in more detail on each of these items, so suffice to say, in the immediate short term, we strongly encourage the passage of a protections package that includes at least the following: an extension of the current temporary COVID protections, a legislative solution to the recent rounding out rule changes at VA, a revision of the incentive compensation ban so the VA guidance matches the longstanding Department of Education guidance schools have followed for years, reasonable flexibilities regarding Section 1018 of Isaacson Rowe, which is a list of personalized information disclosures that schools must provide to prospective students, and addresses the privacy and information disclosure law concerns for international schools that prevent them from participating in Title 38. As we look beyond the need for an extension, the need for broader permanent authority for VA to proactively protect student veterans' benefits in national emergencies is clear. We recognize that further discussions are needed to better understand the exact scale and scope of what these protections would look like and the need to craft these authorities carefully. However, we'd like to reiterate our support for them. This committee saw firsthand the gravity of the situation facing tens of thousands of student veterans and their families as the pandemic unfolded in earnest back in March of last year. The sheer amount of work involved cannot be overstated, and it makes no sense to simply allow that work to expire instead of serving as a model for necessary permanent authorities to ensure adequate protections are available for the next emergency. Turning to the broader impacts of the pandemic, one of the top concerns expressed by student veterans is the inequitable monthly housing allowance rate distance learners receive compared to traditional students. While Congress and this committee in particular responded quickly to preserve MHA rates for students who were attending classes in person but forced online, students who were enrolled solely in distance learning courses continue to receive an MHA rate that is half the national average. With everyone fully online, this disparity was plain for all to see. With more students learning online than ever before, regardless of course type, many student veterans see this difference as unfair or a punishment for their school or education choices. SVA recognizes that the pandemic has shown this difference to be unreasonable. Now it is the time to begin the discussion on how best to bring parity to these MHA rates while keeping online educational quality in mind. On the topic of post-traditional student supports, childcare is one of the most frequently raised concerns by chapter leaders across the country. There is great need for childcare options on evenings and weekends when most students are often doing group work or studying. This makes sense considering the 2020 SVA census found 53% of respondents were parents. SVA is supportive of this committee looking for ways to strengthen the childcare options available to student veteran parents. A recent draft bill in the House would establish a child care stipend that allows the flexibility to use non-traditional child care options like trusted family and neighbors when traditional child care isn't available. This bill idea came directly from a VFW SVA legislative fellow and SVA chapter leader, Alona Kearney from Evergreen State College. We hope this committee will take up the bill once it passes through the House. Lastly, I'd like to raise the issues of National Guard and Reserve benefit parity and midterm activation protections. As U.S. defense plans have changed from a strategic reserve to an operational reserve, we have seen an increased operational tempo for members of reserve components, especially the National Guard. This concern has been especially evident recently as we saw members of the National Guard tasked with responding to a steady stream of unprecedented challenges, including multiple natural disasters, COVID-19, and the violent insurrection on our nation's capital. SVA has also heard from student service members who face challenges in completing coursework or exams due to conflicts with short-term military training or deployments. Administrative issues such as withdrawal and reimbursement can also contribute to uncertainty for service members as they manage concurrent military service and school obligations. SVA believes most institutions sincerely want to help these students balance their military duties with their studies, but students nevertheless lack a basic safety net in many instances. SVA is aware of recent efforts to bring legislative solutions to both of these areas and look forward to working with the committee on these issues. I'd again like to express our appreciation for this committee's commitment to acting on the issues raised by student veterans themselves, issues that focus on how best to support their success on campus and beyond, like child care and employment. That commitment is clearly reflected in the topics under consideration in today's hearing. Thank you again for your time, attention, and devotion to the cause of veterans in higher education. I look forward to your questions.
Justice Monk, thank you for your testimony, and there will be questions. I will tell you, you may have gotten 8 minutes of testimony into a 5-minute presentation. That was pretty impressive. Good information, too. Thank you for that. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Schumacher. You had mentioned that VBA is announcing policy changes without communicating important details about how to implement those changes to schools. So from your perspective, what improvements can VA, and if necessary, Congress make to ensure that school officials are getting the proper information and training required to implement any VA regulations?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciated the testimony from Mr. Burke earlier in that we are hiring more VA workers. In my opinion, and in our experience at the SCO level, a lot of those workers seem to be implemented at the front end, sort of the frontline worker. We've seen great improvements in customer service when you call the SEO hotline, and lots of help being offered at that level. The area that I think we need to see improvement is sort of the non-commissioned officer, if you will, to sort of borrow from the military. We have communication coming down from our officers, being VBA, the federal level of VA, and a lot of activity down on the ground, your low enlisted folks. There seems to be a level of management and leadership missing sort of in the middle. And these are at the level of our ELRs. For the state of Montana, our ELR is located out of Denver, and he oversees the states of Wyoming and Montana. He has a lot on his plate. I think he needs help. And these are the individuals who help take policy and communicate to the SEOs at the school level to help us stay in compliance with the VA and ultimately serve our student veterans better.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think I am going to ask this question, actually. Look, Montana is still struggling from COVID. It continues to be a major problem. And I know Montana schools are doing everything they can to support their students. Can you talk about what MSU is doing to support student veterans who tend to be a little older than average college student and may have families to support?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. Here at Montana State, like I said, we pride ourselves on serving those who have served. We go above and beyond simply just certifying the various chapters of the post 9/11 GI Bill. I think ensuring the timely and accurate certification of those benefits is so important. Every student's first question when they come to campus is, how am I going to pay for my time here? And it only becomes more complex when you have a family and other greater financial responsibilities than maybe your 18-year-old counterparts do. So here at Montana State, we not only have that dedicated space for veterans to come together, have community, but they can also interact with dedicated staff like myself. Free tutoring, mental health counseling is huge, as I mentioned, something that we focus on. Mentors and advisors, though, just somebody to sort of grab a hold of them and show them how to do this thing we call college. And it's something I'm very proud of here at MSU. Now, I know you're aware of the challenges we face here in Southwest Montana and Bozeman in particular, the high cost of living, the housing inaffordability, and just the lack of housing options. Childcare options, as was mentioned by my SVA counterpart, are all issues. And so when you have to choose between taking care of your children, making money for your family, or pursuing your degree, your family and your children are going to come first. And that means that your education, you may have to drop classes or something like that. And so MSU is doing everything we can to make it so they don't have to make those difficult decisions.
Thank you for that. Dr. DeGroat, quickly, PhD or MD?
EDD, Doctor of Education.
Adult
Development, studying veterans transition.
Very good. Some of your testimony was enlightening and disturbing at the same time. And I will tell you that I think everybody on this committee, everybody that's paid attention, has probably asked themselves many, many times, what can we do to drop the suicide? We're losing nearly one an hour, and one a day would be too many, okay? So the question, and you said it, you said the transition from military to civilian can be very, very stressful. And I think if you take a look at the folks, if they were never deployed, they're committing suicide at the same rate as the folks that were in theater. So there's something going on, and I think you may have put your finger on it. So the question is that I think when people are having change inflicted in their life, and this is the only thing they've known in their life since they've been an adult in many, many cases, what's the best way to approach that? I know you talked about having people there and not websites and not talking in big groups, but getting the folks down in small. What's the most important thing that we can be doing to make this transition a little less stressful?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it kind of goes back when I did my research initially, when we transitioned as a nation from selective service and draft to the all-volunteer force that has well served us today. We, as a country, commissioned some of the best social sciences, relevant human resource, and we built a great system. There was very little to no studies I've ever found where we really studied anything other than separation. So this phenomena of transition is really something new in its current definition that other previous generations did not have to face. So I think we're facing a new phenomena where we think we've done this after each war. And we've applied a lot of the same mechanisms that worked for previous generations, expecting it would work for this generation of post 9/11 era veterans. So there really is a lack of understanding about the nature of the transition experience today, because it's not simply just going to war, coming home, and going back to the farm or back to the factory. It's really a bold move. It's not just occupational, it's an entirely life change. The Holmes and Rahey Social Readjustment Scale that I discovered lists the 43 most stressful events an adult goes through in their life, and it rank orders them from 1 to 43. Interestingly, veterans transition or transition from the military is not considered one, but it should. So I took all of the cases of the veterans that I individually studied on their life experience of transition, and almost every one had about 8 or 9 of those 43 issues happening at the same time. And that was, and if you add up the stress level scores, it puts them over the top. Then I tried to figure out, what is a comparative experience to this, to veterans transition. And the nearest thing you can find in psychological research is marital divorce. And you think about how unhealthy that is for all parties involved. So I think it starts with not really understanding that we're facing a very unique phenomena. This is the first generation of veterans who went to war as digital natives. They were co-present on the home front and the battlefront because of social media, the cognitive demand on their roles in combat while also being leaders in their homes at the same time, the iteration, going to combat 5-6 times, not going once till it ends. And then the last part I would say that's fundamentally different with this generation is about 80% of previous generation of veterans were absorbed in the Allied military career field. We had a very robust industrial base. The military talent and experience and the culture translated directly into work in defense industry or consultants or all those contractors. And those, because of outsourcing, just-in-time logistics and commercial off-the-shelf acquisition, we have lost that industry to hire our veterans. This is the first generation of veterans that have to actually compete with people already in the workforce, and they have been absent from the workforce. So there is no silver bullet. It's just more complicated, Mr. Chairman, than people really look at it, and we use precedents that don't fit.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Senator Moran.
Chairman, thank you. Let me begin first with Mr. Monk. In your testimony, you mentioned the Student Veterans Association's call for a National Guard and Reservist GI Bill parity. As you know, I introduced a bill to do that. I was joined by Chairman Tester. Would you explain for the record why there is a need for that parity between the National Guard and Reserve components and the active duty components? Tell us why that matters, particularly as it relates to the topic that we're talking about, training and education and transition.
Absolutely, and thank you for the question, Senator. It's important because the activation orders under which our National Guardsmen and reservists are activated under carry with it different benefit accrual structures. So if you are activated under one set of orders, you may receive full benefits just as you would if you were under active duty orders, or if you're activated under other orders, then you might not receive any at all. If the duration of your activation, for example, is under 30 days, you will be eligible for a different kind of benefit accrual than for orders lasting longer than that. And it's important because, as I noted in the verbal and written testimony, we've seen an increasing change in the type of orders that our reserve components are expected to perform. And so the jobs and tasks are becoming more and more dangerous relative to their historical norms. And they are much closer in reality to what their active duty counterparts are also performing. There's a popular example of the camera operator down at the southern border a couple of years ago that the National Guardsmen and the active duty folks were trading off during the day and nighttime of doing the same exact job, but the National Guardsmen were unable to, or were not accruing any sort of federal education benefit. So it's important to make sure that if we're asking these service members to do the same job and endure the same risks, that they receive the same benefits and considerations. And so we think that, a single day in uniform should be the same across any sort of activation order or service type.
Thank you for your answer, and thank you for your support of those individuals that are in that circumstance to solve their problem, to solve a problem. Dr. Grote, welcome to the nation's capital. Welcome to the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. And thank you for your constant, persistent, educated endeavors to try to take care of veterans at Kansas State University and our community across the state and really across the nation. Thank you for your own service to the country. I hold you in high regard, as I hold all veterans. I also hold maybe just a slightly higher regard those veterans who work on behalf of their fellow veterans, and you exemplify that. And Dr. DeGroat is highly regarded in really across Kansas, but certainly in our home community of Manhattan. Doctor, you have led so many innovative programs and changes at K-State to assist student veterans and transitioning service members. Maybe you could help us, if you discuss maybe the lessons learned, two or three lessons learned at Kansas State University that could be and should be implemented nationwide.
Well, thank you very much, Senator. I think philosophically, and I got to start the Office of Military and Veterans Affairs in 2006, where our land-grant university did not have it had a mission of serving military and veterans, but it didn't necessarily have an office or a full-time employee kind of directing it. So philosophically, we decided to build a military inclusive environment. That means the veteran students, military students, are not on a pedestal. They are well served by just being filling in and moving in with the mosaic of all other students, first generation students, students off the farm, international students, and so we didn't elevate hierarchical the role of veteran. It was revered. They have special benefits, but building a community, an institution where they're respected, but they're equal to all other people, I think that developmentally prepared them to go out into the workplace and out into the world after the university to use that period of time in their baccalaureate experience or graduate school experience to transition from institutional life in the military to more of an independent institutional life, not just while they're getting their skills, but also how to live and conduct themselves as students. And we encourage our veteran students to get involved in other things, the Greek communities and professional societies, and get involved in the arts and athletics and recreation and things. So they're not just typical a lot of veteran students just go to class and go back to their apartments. They don't really matriculate into the whole hidden curriculum of a college experience. So I think philosophically we've succeeded in several decades of really broadening the experience of our veteran students from simply seeking a credential that they wanted for future employment. I think that has helped a great deal. I used to say to our veteran student center people that if it's great to see all of our freshman veteran students in our veteran center, if they're there the day before graduation, maybe they haven't really embraced the new identities and the new roles. And I would hope they're over in the lounge with the engineering students, if they're engineers, or over architecture, if they're architecture students. It's not to diminish their veteran status, but sometimes their veteran status is preventing them from moving forward and re-identifying as a K-Stater or a Montana State Bobcat or an accountant, and then moving forward into those roles. And it's based on the principle you've got to let something go in order to adopt something new. So I think that's philosophically how we've approached it, and not centralized things, and just allowed all of our university colleges and departments and units all embrace this philosophy of they're just another student, and let's prepare them like we prepare all other students. And that seems to work better than focusing on their unique needs and catering to those at the expense of more generalizing and blending them into the common experience.
Art, thank you very much. I missed a sentence of your testimony because the chairman was whispering in my ear that he's something. What was the word?
White hot smart.
White hot smart. I guess I agree. So, but I would conclude just again thanking you for what you do and your presence here. But to describe the efforts at Kansas State University, the committee ought to know that Manhattan, Kansas, the home of K-State, is adjacent to Fort Riley, where we have 15,000 active duty soldiers. There's about 18,000 family members, 29,000 veterans and retirees. So it is a significant component of our community, and for Kansas State to take such an active role in this issue, it has a real consequence.
Senator Bo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mock, in your testimony, you talked about how the pandemic accelerated telelearning. And in that regard, with the online instruction, when it comes to veterans education, can you talk a little bit about how they're successfully transitioning, why it's important to reach the areas that are not getting reached, the underserved areas, and then also what's your impression of the quality of education that they're getting with the telelearning? And then it's interesting, Dr. DeGroat, I appreciated the discussion on suicide. This is something that Senator Moran have set next to each other literally for the last 20 years discussing. And again, is that playing any part, Mr. Bunk? Do you feel, I know that I was in college during the Vietnam years as veterans were coming back, and they lent so much to actually being in the classroom, you know, and again, you know, having them there, getting to know them and this and that. Can you talk a little bit about those things? And then also, we really do appreciate your work on Student Veterans of America.
Thank you for the compliment, Senator, and certainly for the questions. I'll do my best to cover everything you asked, and if I miss anything, please let me know. To the first point about reaching underserved folks, it's critically important to meet student veterans wherever they are and wherever they need to be met. So if that entails making sure that they have the proper access and you know, connection to, say, reliable broadband internet to access the online education program that they would like to pursue, then that means helping them with that. If that means ensuring that they have adequate MHA to meet their financial needs and obligations in rural or underserved communities, it means that. It really just, at its core, means meeting the student veteran wherever they need to be met, and providing them with the highest quality service that we can provide them, and you know, delivering their earned education benefits. To the next one about quality of online education, we think it's certainly improved over the last decade plus. I mean, we can't underscore enough the quality of online education and how it's improved leaps and bounds. With that said, I do want to temper expectations a little bit, because I certainly agree with your later comment that being on campus and in person is valuable unto itself, even outside of the classroom. Just taking part and being part of a campus body and interacting with people from different backgrounds and experiences, that certainly has a tremendous amount of value on its own. Part of the decision that veterans have to make when they decide which program of education to pursue or which style of education to pursue is, do the benefits of being on campus and the networking opportunities and things of that nature outweigh the benefits of online education's convenience, because it comes directly to your home. The typically faster speed of these courses. Many of these programs offer faster degree programs and shorter turnaround, which is valuable in many cases to a student veteran. So however it works for them and however they make that decision, we have to meet them where it needs to be. And I apologize, I've talked too long. There was another question that you asked, and I would like to answer it if you can please repeat it for me.
No, that's fine. I think you actually covered it all. Either that or we both forgot it, which is quite possible.
Senator, I could touch on the suicide comment, and I've worked on the governor's challenge for veteran suicide when the VA released the national strategy for the prevention of veteran suicide, and they offered every state in the union, and I was one of 6 or 7 states, Kansas, and so I learned a lot more about the suicide phenomena than I had previously known, and I think where it applies to transitioning veterans, particularly those that have not seen combat, and you can't explain it as unmediated combat trauma that still lingers. It's a combination that the veteran has a kind of a two-prong isolation element. When I interview a lot of the veterans I'm studying or helping transition, I ask them how many Facebook likes or all their different friends and their social media, and 99% of them on their devices, their social connections that they identify with are all military. And about 10 days after they leave the military, those names are irrelevant. So their first level of isolation is leaving their tribe that has been so important, and so deep bonds, and without the ability of forming new social bonds or being at a workplace or in college or someplace, they become alone in the crowd. And then their second level of isolation, which I think is really the terminal case, is now they're out in the world and they just feel like their life is not worth living. There's no one that they can talk to. There's no one that cares if they live or die, and they make the conclusion that they're just alone in the world. This is why animal-based therapies have been relatively successful, because at least an animal gives them, another living thing, a reason to wake up every day and take care of something else. So I think this generation has some different needs and different causes to these problems. But it's so devastating that we just cannot solve this or get it better. In fact, that it's worse, 15% more this year on active duty than last. Despite all we've known and all we're doing and the changes we're making, it's still it's a pervasive challenge that we've really got to get our hands on, and I'm continuing to work it as best I can.
Well, thank you very much. Can I ask one more thing, Mr. Chair? And again, thank you so much. That's really very helpful. Mr. Murray, we appreciate you guys, appreciate all of your all's work in so many different ways. Another subject that we've talked about, sitting over on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, Jerry and I, and then now we've got a new partner over here, is TAP. And, it's just been a problem. It's so much better than it used to be. But I'm curious, you mentioned, the statistics you're in regard to people not participating. And initially, this was something that was not mandatory. It was, if they made time. And back during those days, 9/11 had happened and this and that. The op tempo was so it was really difficult for commanders to actually make it such that they really had a good reason sometimes that they couldn't afford, for these folks to be off. What are you seeing? What's the reason is there a reason that you're finding that we simply aren't getting this done even today?
Senator, you're right, and I do understand the readiness answer.
Sure. Which
however,
again was much more understandable, I think, then than now.
But what I would say is that seems to be the kind of fallback answer all the time.
Right.
We can't always blame readiness for not doing other things. If truly they don't have the time and resources, the people available to send a transitioning sergeant to TAP, then that's maybe a larger problem if there's only a single soldier or airman capable. But I mean, it's culture, and we're not going to legislate culture, but we need to continue to kind of grow that into existence. What I would suggest is making sure that the programs that are in place, the changes that have been made, are adhered to. The TAP cannot be, it's designed to be uniform. It's designed to be spread across every single base or every single service member. But there are plenty of resources in the community that might fit those tailored needs of each man and woman separating. Right. Connecting them to those local resources, whether it be in New York City, California, Texas, that's looking for specific jobs, specific industries. That's where we're going to really help improve some of these outcomes. Get them into the schools, get them into the employment programs, the support groups, whether there are veteran groups in that community. That's what we really want to focus on, and that's a DOD thing. TAP is a DOD program. Right. They're partnered with VA and DOL, right, and they do a great partnership, but it's DOD that needs to make sure that they're starting from the get-go.
No, I appreciate that fact, and yet, many of us are intertwined in that space, so we can put pressure in that regard. But appreciate you, and certainly appreciate the VFW. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Senator Bozeman. I want to thank all the witnesses for being here today. I think that we came in here talking about, high-quality education leading to employment, and I think it's really, really important that we continue to keep our foot on the gas. I would also just say, kind of a little bit off script here, is that the issue with mental health in this country in the military is particularly disturbing. But the truth is it's everywhere in our society. And I've always said if we can unlock what's going on in the veterans' mind with the transition and after they become civilians, and even while they're in the military, we may be able to transfer that information we know to the private sector so everybody can win. And I really hope that the VA and mental health groups out there really utilize you, Dr. DeGroat. I think that you have a lot to offer to this conversation that most people don't talk about. So I want to thank you.